Namaskara, good evening, everybody. At the outset, I'd like to thank BIC for giving BET, Bangalore Environment Trust, Mr. Devare and myself, an opportunity to talk about preserving the green canopy in Bangalore. It's a subject I'm sure every single resident of Bangalore is interested in. A few words about Mr. Devare before he takes over. It's a very well thought out presentation which he's got. I won't take up his time, but just to say that Devare early in life was very interested in greenery and the environment. As a young man in Pune, which is his home, around his home, everywhere he planted fruiting trees. Then when he started working, he came to Bangalore, and in 1986 he was in charge of factory, well, the HRD and administration part of it, which occupied 73 acres. And he was entirely responsible for making sure that nobody even stole a sapling without his permission. Of course, the permission never came. So that area is still very, very green. Then in 2007, two things happened. One was the MG Road Boulevard was destroyed. The beautiful Pride of India trees were taken away. And Devare got directly involved in the first tree transplantation in Bangalore, where for the first time, almost like an experiment, all the beautiful Pride of India trees were moved to Karyappa Park. That was quite an involved exercise because we had very little experience. It was a BET exercise, and Devare was one of the two people who was responsible for moving it. Then subsequently, Devare got involved. Well, he was inducted into Bangalore Environment Trust as a trustee in 2007. And then, of course, he's a hands-on person, and he realized that there's tremendous depredation going on in terms of cutting trees and the greenery and the environment. So he got into the nitty-gritty of how to prevent this from happening. As for the rest, Devare will take over from here.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Vijay, and a very good evening to all of you. I have sat on one of those chairs on many occasions. Thanks to BET, I am on this side of the auditorium today, and it's my great pleasure to make this presentation to you. The first thing to say is that what I'm going to present is not my individual work, but it's a product of collaborative teamwork. And therefore, at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Yellappa Reddy, the chairman of Bangalore Environment Trust, that is BET, and Captain Prabhala, the previous chairman of Bangalore Environment Trust, for their full-fledged support in all our endeavors. Also, thanks to many team members of BET, the trustees, who have been a source of great help and support all the time. The next thing I want to say is that there are lots of people actually doing work in this space of tree preservation and plantation. Very, very dedicated people. They have even gone to the court. So what I am doing today is really picking up the baton from them and running ahead. I would really like to salute these people before I make this presentation, because I believe that it's really more of a continuation of what they have done. And thanks to all of you for coming here on a Saturday evening to listen to both of us. Now, the title of this is Preserving the Green Canopy of Bangalore, Story of the Struggle. So probably you must be wondering why that word struggle is there. And I'll elaborate on that definitely during the presentation. But right at the beginning, I want to tell you that it's a long struggle, several years. and looking at what's happening, the struggle is likely to continue. So, what's our agenda today? The context, the basic issue, BET's efforts, impact of the PIL, and going forward. This is what we are going to talk about in the next 1 hour. Some of you must have seen this image, and according to me, this is the most definitive pictorial representation of what has happened to Bangalore's greenery over the last 40-50 years. So if you look at the figures over here, the vegetation percentage was 68.2 and the built-up was 7.97 in 73. Vegetation came down to 38.7 by 2002 and the built-up went to 37.4. And by 2020, the vegetation is down to 2.96% and the built-up area has gone to 93.3. This really captures very well what has happened at the broader global level. Now coming down to the ground, why are we losing trees? What exactly is happening to our trees? Is something from an activist point of view I would like to explain. And here again, I am using some pictures. Some of them I have taken myself. Some of them I have sourced from my colleagues. So here is a tree cut for the better view of a hoarding. And all of you have seen this. This is rampant. And maybe it has come down a little bit because there are no hoardings. The hoardings themselves are not there these days. This one is something that BESCOM does. And although BESCOM has all the equipment, they cut the trees in a very haphazard manner like this. And the tree gets mutilated in the process. This is one of the huge heritage trees cut for a KRDCL, Karnataka Road Development Corporation Limited's project called the Bangalore Surrounding Roads, 155 kilometers. More about it I will talk later. But this is a heritage tree, must be at least about 100-150 years old, gone. And then this is the metro project consuming a lot of trees. So this is trees being felled at the dairy circle. So this is how we have been losing trees, and I do not really wish to share any statistics about how many trees we have lost, etc., because in my opinion, these pictures actually say it all, and it's something that many of us have also seen around. Now, the next part of our agenda here is what's actually the basic issue. And for that, I want to show you a picture. This is something that I clicked myself on the Sarjapura Attibele Road in January 2020. We went there because, this KRDCL's project was announced, some work had already started, and the activists there said that, a lot of trees here are under threat. So this is one tree which I clicked there. And in my opinion, this particular picture symbolizes the basic issue. So what the basic issue is? So you have a car over here, and you have the board of a real estate project. Now, the real estate project board is also very interesting. It says if you book a flat, you get a car. And so now the Bangalore city and its environs have lost hundreds and thousands of trees to accommodate the ever-increasing population of vehicles in the city. And of course, a lot of trees have been lost to development. And in the early period of this month, we had those terrible floods. And therefore, the issue of unplanned development of Bangalore is right now under very, very hot debate. But, the casualty have been the trees in a very, very big number. So what the basic issue really is? The basic issue is the conflict between development and environment. Now, there is no question that we need development. But what is it that we require? We require sustainable development. We require a balance between environment and development. And there is a word that some colleagues of ours, from Bombay have coined, is called the development projects. And 8,000 people came on the roads to stop the steel flyover. Of course, the NGT case also helped. Then there was another one called the elevated corridors. Lot of resistance, lot of media attention, everything. And even that project probably was that time shelved. But you may be surprised to know that there is something called a comprehensive mobility plan for the city. And the elevated corridors have made a backdoor entry into that comprehensive mobility plan again. Apart from these major projects, there are projects like underpasses, road widening, white topping, which, I would like to call as bordering on development and not really development. Just give you an example. If you are familiar with Indian Institute of Science and a road going from Indian Institute of Science to Mekri Circle, that is called the C.V. Raman Nagar Road, a white topping project was going on there. And we got a notice from BBMP that they are going to chop 14 trees there. So I went there to check, why do trees have to go for the white topping work? Because it's only something to do with the surface. And then when I went there, I found that along with white topping, they had also added a component of road widening, which was entirely unnecessary. And therefore, my submission here is that time has now come for us to really question some of these projects. Just as in the context of the terrible floods, a lot of these real estate projects and the destruction of lakes is being considered. What is required here is a reconsideration of a lot of these projects which are, in the nature of development, in my opinion. So, now the conflict between development and environment is not new. It's an old conflict recognized way back in 1976 when the government decided to actually enact an act called Karnataka Preservation of Trees Act 1976, or popularly known as the Tree Act. What does this Tree Act, what is this Tree Act supposed to do? It is supposed to achieve this balance between development and environment, because the government at that stage realized that the time has now come, or we have reached a stage where we need to legislate, restrict and regulate the felling of trees. So this is something that is very widely recognized as an issue, and therefore a legal framework has been created for this purpose. Now talking about BET's efforts and struggle in this space, and of course leading up to a PIL in the Karnataka High Court. So what did BET really do? BET has been at it from 2007 onwards, held a meet, tried saving trees, tried planting trees, and we said that let us examine all this within the framework of the Tree Preservation Act. And so many of us studied it, and we realized that the act was fine in some respects, but implementation was bad. And some provisions of the act were flawed. Based on the experience, they needed amendments. So we suggested amendments initially in 2012, again in 2015 after getting inputs from a lot of people. Whatever we suggested, I'm sorry to say, but found a place in the waste paper basket of the Forest Department. And then, under the Act itself, a Metro Tree Committee was appointed. So 3 of us were on that committee. There were other stalwarts like Dr. T.V. Ramachandra, Harini, etc. And the recommendations of this committee were completely ignored. And therefore, at the end of this 2017-18, we had no choice but to file a PIL. And so we filed this in April 2018, and with the express purpose of asking the court to give directions for implementation of the Tree Act in its letter and spirit. So that's a landmark event in the case of our struggle. So now, what are the key outcomes of this PIL? Tree census, which is mandatory under the Act, had not happened for 43 years. And the then Chief Justice was absolutely livid about it. And he said it has to happen. And so, under his directions, the tree census started. Then some of you are probably aware of the Balabruhi guest house. There was a plan last year to renovate it or, break it down, cut a lot of trees for building a club for the legislators. And it was approved by all political parties. So we went against it in the court, and the court has given a stay. That stay still remains. Incidentally, today's Deccan Herald carries a news item saying that some people are asking the government not to touch the Balabruhi guest house. The next thing that I'm talking about are extremely significant orders and observations of the Chief Justice. One is, there is a principle, that there is a doctrine called the public trust. What it means is that it is the responsibility of the state and all the public agencies to do everything possible to protect the environment. And this was invoked in our case. Then there is precautionary principle. This is again an extremely important principle, because as we all know, after a tree is cut, it's all over. There is no point in finding out whether it has been cut legally or illegally and who's responsible, etc. That's an academic exercise. What is important is to do something as a precaution. Precaution is better than care. And so that even that principle was upheld. It's part of the order of the High Court. And another extremely important principle, observation or order of the court was that every single tree is important. Because there is a feeling, okay, we need this development, 10, 12 trees going, how does it matter? No. The Chief Justice said no. Every tree is important because its loss is irreversible. And then, of course, a procedure for felling mainly 50 and above trees. So I will now be spending a little time, and please bear with me because this is a bit of a long-winded diagram that I need to explain. So if any agency now in Bangalore wants to cut more than 50 trees, it has to make an application to the tree officer of BBMP. Next is, when he receives it, he has to issue a public notice, either in the newspaper and also uploading that application and the notice on the website. Then the most important thing here is, citizens get 10 days to file their objections. Next step is number 3, assessment by the tree officer himself, and then reference to the tree expert committee. Let me take half a minute to explain what this tree expert committee is all about. Under the Tree Act, there is no provision for a tree expert committee, but This was appointed by the High Court because we proved to the court that the designated authorities under the Act were not doing their job. And therefore, the court found it fit to appoint an expert committee. Now, that committee does its own assessment, goes to the site from where the trees are going to be felled, inspect each and every tree there, and then gives its own recommendation and decision. And along with this, they also identify and select sites for translocation of trees. After the assessment of the tree expert committee, the formal order or the permission is issued by the tree officer, either of BBMP or Forest Department. And all this also has to be uploaded on the website, including the full document of the proceedings and so on. Again, as petitioners, we have another 15 days to raise objections. And we raise them almost every time based on the inputs that we get from citizens. Then this has to be approved by the High Court, mainly in the case of the BMRCL. And unless it is approved, there is no go ahead for felling or translocating the trees. Then there is a need for the authorities to submit a very detailed plan for compensatory plantation, where it will be, what kind of species will be planted, what is the soil test quality there, etc. And then the tree officer's responsibility to supervise the tree translocation. And final, number 12 is the most critical thing. Because as you know, plantation happens in Bangalore all the time, okay? And, in a lighter vein, I sometimes say that every year the plantation happens at the same spot. The reason is, by the time 1 year is over, the tree is gone. And so that plot is vacant, so it happens. Now, there is absolutely no accountability for survival. Whereas, under the court orders now, there has to be quarterly reporting of survival. And more about it, I will talk. But now, this is the notice. And this is how it looks like. Now, friends, let me be honest here. There is a large section of people, probably sitting here also, who don't get a hard copy of a newspaper anymore. That's number one. Number two, all those who still read a hard copy of a newspaper, they skip these tender notice pages. And therefore, it is very highly unlikely that you would have come across. But the situation is changing very fast. Because, I am on about 10 WhatsApp groups. And so whenever there is a notice like this, these days I get it. I get a message or a post on the WhatsApp group that this is the notice that has come and very sad, etc. Let's raise objections and all that happens. Media, 2-3 media, I don't want to name them for obvious reasons, but 2-3 media reporters check the BBMP website and these notices almost on a daily basis these days. And then they will tell me. And of course, I have an alarm on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 in the night. When that alarm rings, I check the BBMP website. And so, if there is anything, then I alert the citizens, I alert the media, etc. So this is, but more important than the procedure. See, the procedure is a mundane, boring thing. I want to tell you about the principles. The first principle is transparency. In the past, if there was tree felling, how would we come to know? Only when the team which cuts the tree reaches the spot with access. Today, we come to know about the plans for felling much in advance because everything has now become transparent. It has to be that public notice or it has to be on the BBMP website. Number two is citizen participation. Yes, in the past, occasionally they have held public consultations. But now it is mandatory and it happens. Citizens have a chance to raise their objections. Third is the tree translocation, plantation, tree felling, everything is a matter of expertise. And now, I mean, not that the forest department people are not experts, but now there are experts appointed and the role of the experts has been totally formalized. Rigorous scrutiny of all applications. There is a document that the tree committee has to give which lists every single tree enumerated by them and the reason why they have decided either to recommend its retention, translocation or felling. And so everything is now available in the form of a scrutiny document. Then I mentioned to you already mandatory transplantation and compensatory plantation. Because earlier also, especially BMRCL, they have been saying that we do a lot of compensatory plantation. But I'm sorry to say here, but the trees were cut in Jayanagar, but the plantation was done in Nelamangala or Hesarghatta. Now that plantation, compensatory plantation has to happen within the BBMP limits. And last but not the least is accountability for survival. Now, accountability, very, very touchy and sensitive issue. Recently we had those floods and every TV channel, every newspaper asking the question, who is accountable for this? And no answers are forthcoming. I mean, everybody is looking at each other, passing the buck and, things like that. But, through the process that is laid down by the court, this has happened. And, how it gets translated into reality is something that I will try to say. Now, why have I used the word struggle? Because in the course of this entire journey, of our PIL, it's a journey of the struggle. Why? And I have no hesitation in saying that the authorities have shown apathy, they have put obstacles, and they have actually been resistant to some of those things. And how did it get manifest actually? So the tree census, something that had not happened for 43 years, was started only after the bench issued a contempt notice. Until then, they were just dilly-dallying it. Citizens were raising very high quality objections, but they were getting ignored. And at least on 3 or 4 occasions, the bench itself observed that the tree committee is not applying its mind. In fact, the tree committee at one stage was changed and a new committee was appointed. So that was the situation. And this KRDCL, on this point I want to spend a minute or two. Please listen to me very carefully. This was a shocker for us, absolute shocker. Because these roads were getting made on the outskirts of Bangalore, called the Bangalore surrounding roads. And I started getting pictures from people who had traveled on that road of massive heritage trees getting felled. So I, investigated, I, spoke to a lot of people, and then we went to the court and said that this is what is happening, and we have no idea whether they have followed the proper process and the permission procedure or not. To our horror, to our surprise, the advocate for KRDCL said that the areas in which these trees are getting cut, which include Sarjapura, Atibele, Jigni, Nelamangala, and so on, these areas have not even notified under the Tree Act after 45 years. The government has the authority to notify or not notify, but these areas were not notified, and therefore the entire procedure that I talked about was not applicable. But then we were fortunate to have a Chief Justice. He said, doesn't matter, even if this is not done, even if these areas are not covered, please go by the doctrine of public trust. You are a public agency, you are obligated to save these trees as a part of environment protection. And last, COVID has been an excuse for all of us for various things, but for the authorities. The tree census had started, but it was going slow. So we inquired, I said, what's going on with the tree census? They said, no, sir, it's problem because we are not getting people, we're not go. And the tree census was there for languishing, nothing happening. And, look at the other side. COVID did not come in the way of felling of thousands of trees, but COVID came in the way of the tree census. So this is what I said about the struggle. Now, during this period, of course, we were able to cope up with the struggle only because of the support. And support came from various quarters, including some pockets and sections of the government authorities themselves. Because, they have their own priorities, they have their own agendas, but it was good for us. Citizens' support, enormous. A couple of citizens went in the middle of the night when tree felling started near Silk Board, took pictures and videos and shared with me. They were actually submitted to the court immediately on the next day. Print media, social media, very supportive. Academia and experts, very, very supportive. And we were fortunate to have a fantastic team of lawyers and, of course, excellent orders from the High Court. So this is, how we were able to live through this entire struggle. And so now let's look at the impact of all this. What has it done? And I'm going to share this impact with you in two different ways. One will be quantitative terms. What has happened. So there are some numbers here. And I have taken numbers only from these two big ticket projects. One the BMRCL and the other is the KRDCL. So transplantation, something like 3335 trees are going to be transplanted. Some are already transplanted, but in the process of transplant. Compensatory plantation, 72,230. And I have taken a conservative figure for KRDCL because they have not come back on the correct figure, so I have taken a smaller figure. So the total between the two is 75,565. And thanks for the applause, but you will, the next couple of slides that you will see, this figure will pale into insignificance altogether. So this is what the impact has been. And let me say that the 75,565 trees shall be planted because it's mandatory. And what is it that we have to strive for? We have to strive for maximum survival. That's our responsibility. Now, as far as the qualitative impact, now the compliance is happening. Because if the compliance doesn't happen, obviously we go to the court. The court has been very kind to us. Even after 4 years, the case has not yet been dismissed. And we are also making sure that we keep on getting these daily and interim orders and don't get the final order. So we are managing. Detailed documentation has started. So if you look at the permission document, some of them run into 200 pages with lots of photographs because that's also mandatory. Documents are in public domain. If you go to the BBMP Forest Department website, so you click BBMP Forest Downloads, you will get at the moment something like 150 plus documents. If you go to Forest Department, that clicking there is very, very complicated, so I won't tell you, but you will get at least about 50 documents over there. So that's what is happening. This is what is happening. What needs to happen more? The tree expert committee needs to do a lot more, because the tree experts committee's mission and their brief is to save trees. Okay, and within saving again, the emphasis is on retention. What is the tree expert committee doing today? They are doing it. Something like 26%, if I'm mistaken, not 26% is actually the saving that has happened. 26% by way of, but not enough by way of retention. So the expert committee has to do something more. Accountability, very small progress. Because recently, some of you might have read in the papers that of the trees transplanted by BMRCL, a lot of trees died. And so the question asked, and I was there in the court, the judge asked, why have these trees died? And usual wishy-washy answers. No, the species were not suitable for transplantation. Plus, there was an unusual summer this year. So all these reasons were quoted. And finally, of course, the Chief Justice took an undertaking from the concerned agencies, I don't want to name all of them, okay, took an undertaking that they will now take accountability for survival. And right now itself, there is some progress there. Survival of the further batches has slightly improved, so we are on the right track. But I'm very sorry to say that the proactive interest in environment and trees in particular is not yet visible. Now I'll give you an example. There's white topping work going all over town. And I managed to access a document which gives the scope of the white topping document. And when I looked at it, there is a provision for tree pits. I live on the inner ring road between Domlur and Koramangala. White topping work has happened, the footpaths are already ready, and I realized that there are no tree pits. So I asked somebody to inquire as to why there are no tree pits. And then I was told that the space kept for the tree pits is not counted for billing. And therefore, that space has not been kept by the contractor. Even though the tree pits have been provided in the scope of that document. So this is just a small example, but there are many things which I don't wish to get into. And so the two words below are the struggle continues. And the struggle, I'm sure, will continue. But I'm very happy to tell you that we are not alone in this struggle anymore. Okay, and COVID has also helped because now a lot of people are coming forward. Just yesterday, one of the volunteers, I requested her, would you mind coming to a place XYZ? Because there is a public notice, and we need to go and see that place. Readily came, picked me up, we went there. Tomorrow morning, again, I'm going to another place quite far away, but people are coming forward, and I'm very happy that the struggle will continue, but the struggle is a collective struggle. I think I'm now definitely sensing that, it's been a long monologue, and therefore I thought of showing a very short 1-minute film produced by the Food and Agricultural Organization on 6 benefits of the urban trees. So the last section of the agenda is about the way forward and citizen involvement. So there are 5 things here. What does Bangalore need? Trees under threat, value of a tree, the ways of increasing plantation in the city, and what is the role for the citizens. So I'm going to spend some time on all this. So the first thing is, what does Bangalore need in the context of carbon sequestration and global warming? And again, I'm indebted to Dr. T.V. Ramachandra for the phenomenal work that he is doing. He has identified that we need 8 trees per person just to sequester the carbon dioxide let off during respiration. And he had conducted a study, a census actually, in 2014 showing 14.78 lakh trees. So for a population of 95 lakhs. So we need 8 trees per person. And how many do we have? 1 by 7 per person is the story. And so this is 2014 information. Now the ongoing census, it's happening, and that will give us an updated figure. But there is no question that we have a long way to go. So on the one hand, we have a long way to go, and what is happening? There are trees under threat. And the biggest, of course, is the peripheral ring road, which is going to consume something like 33838 trees. This is the number. Then you have Bangalore University, Jnana Bharati campus, where some yoga institute is going to be built. And for that, something like 9,000, minimum 9,000 trees will go. Then I have talked about, something which has already come into public domain, suburban rail. Just the 2-3 notices that have come recently, 1570, Bellary Road and Jai Mahal Road, 380. This figure is not yet confirmed. And Ejipura flyover, huge 67 trees. So the number is 44855. These are the trees under threat from an illustrative list. Friends, this is not the complete list. The complete list is there, but I really didn't want to flash everything here. It would have been too much actually. So this is what the story is. And what is under threat? Now this is a picture I took in Koramangala. This is the tree that is under threat. It's a huge tree. I think it's a rain tree, very big. It is likely to go. Jnana Bharati campus, Bangalore University. This is under threat. So this is also going to go. And so now, friends, after all this, we are going to incur this loss. Can we put a monetary value to it? In the past, it was not possible, but February 2021, a committee appointed by the Supreme Court gave a monetary measure for the value of a tree. And they said, basically in terms of the oxygen that it generates throughout its life cycle. And they said that the cost of a tree, the value of a tree is its age into 74,500. So a 100-year tree is approximately worth about 75 lakhs. And therefore, we come to this, that we have to therefore save the old trees and also plant new ones. At this stage, I wish to say something about a controversy, Well, I won't say controversy, but there are schools of thought. There are some schools of thought which believe that for development, we will have to sacrifice the old trees. And therefore, we should plant new ones. Now, I got an extremely interesting message one day on one of the WhatsApp groups. And that person said, the old trees are like our parents. Someday, yes, they will go away. But shouldn't they live till at least, their life there is, In the case of trees, there is a certain age at which a tree may mature. So shouldn't we really allow that tree to grow to that? And of course, a small sapling, even if it's a 10 feet high tall sapling, cannot compensate for old trees. And therefore, one of the things that we talk about is tree transplantation. Once again, a very controversial subject. I'll come to the controversy part of it very, very soon. But tree transplantation, BBMP actually, prioritized it way back in 2008. Actually, an office order was issued that the BBMP engineers, the tree officers, etc., must use transplantation as the method of saving trees. And now that green line is a very critical line, friends. High Court has said transplantation only if there is a decision to cut the tree. That means it cannot be retained at its place. So if it is not transplanted, it goes out of existence altogether. And so what is the rate of survival? 0%. That's the time when you actually consider transplantation. So under the process that I explained to you, what is happening? What is happening is that there is a set of guidelines which has been prepared by the tree expert committee. Those have to be religiously followed by the contractor who does the transplantation. Tree officer has to supervise this work because it indeed requires a lot of care. It's very, very delicate. He has to be there present. Number 3, there is an agreement, a very formal agreement under which the contractor has to take care of the tree for 3 years, and roughly 35% of the payment is held back. He doesn't get the entire money. He gets part of that 35% after 18 months, part of it after 36 months, subject to survival. So that's the condition. And of course, there is reporting to HC about survival. So with all this, all the necessary safeguards have been built into the tree transplantation process. Now, what is the cost? There is a belief that it's very expensive. Yes, it does cost. And I have just taken an example, up to 2.5 meters girth, a contract that has been signed by an agency XYZ with a contractor. I have pulled out this figure, which is 21,500, including maintenance for 3 years. That's the figure, out of which 35% will be held back if the tree doesn't survive and if that person doesn't take care. Survival percentage of transplanted trees is a mixed bag. Our own personal experience, one of my colleagues from BET was instrumental in transplantation of several trees, about 180 trees, from the Banerghatta Road metro line into the IIM Bangalore campus and some lakes around. IIM took very good care of these trees. Even on the lake shores, good care was taken. There is survival of about 75 to 80%. Nashik, I went there 4 years ago, and because I had heard about a very good experiment over there, 50 trees were cut from a road project, 45 were surviving. So 90% is survival. And I have met an expert, spent a lot of time with him. He had done transplantation of approximately 2,000 trees, mainly in the Reliance campus in Navi Mumbai. And he told me that the survival rate is about 75%. So there are several other reports, both of survival and non-survival. I have only talked about the 3 things where I have personally interacted, and I have authentic information. The current transplantation that is going on by Metro under our PIL, the first batch, the survival is very poor, extremely poor. But now it's improving. They have learned the lesson. As I said, they have taken this seriously, accountability, but all said and done, survival remains a big challenge. Friends, the transplantation is an evolving technology in our country. It has evolved to a great extent in other countries, particularly in China. And they do it in a very big scale. And we have to move towards that because, in my opinion, in the opinion of BET, this is one of the ways in which we can actually grow Canopy as fast as possible. The next one, so this is a picture from Nashik, which I took personally. The transplantation has happened here sometime in September 2013. And the picture I have taken on 10th of April 2018. So approximately 5 years. And this was, if you see the trunk of this, it's the trunk of a fully grown tree, which is, it's a fig tree, Vijay, am I right? Yeah, so it's a fig tree, a fig tree which is grown very, very well. Then there is a picture of a Bangalore tree as well, done some work done by a real estate company, but again the growth is very, very healthy. Next is the Miyawaki method. If you have heard about it, it's a method of urban greening, mainly because it requires a small piece of land within which very dense forest is grown, almost up to 10 to 10,000 saplings per acre. It grows very fast, 10 times faster, and doesn't require maintenance after 3 years, the way it is done. And again, in Bangalore, we have an example. There is an agency, NGO called Save Trees. They have done it on Mysore Road. And that's the largest man-made forest in Bangalore so far. This is a picture of one of the Miyawaki forests. If you can see that it is very, very densely grown. The third thing is vertical gardens. Because all over town now, we have the metro pillars, we have the pillars of the various flyovers, etc. So what do? We actually grow vertical gardens there. There are several benefits of that. First is an aesthetic value. It actually controls the heat island effect. It cleans the air, and actually the carbon footprint is offset to the extent of 50 to 80% in about 24 hours. And it also acts as a soundproofing barrier. Under the National Clean Air Program, NCAP, if some of you may have heard about it, the BBMP got a budget. The overall budget they have got is some 140 crores, but the budget they have got now for the vertical gardens is approximately 5 crores. So hoping that it will happen. Now this is a picture of a vertical garden somewhere in Bangalore. The next thing is about roadside tree plantation. And this is my pet subject. So I'm going to spend a little time on this. What has happened in Bangalore is that we have lost trees on roads. The finest example, if some of you remember, was the Sheshadri Road between Anandrao Circle and the the junction of Nupatungura Road and all that, So it was a majestic road. I mean, I cannot never forget it. We have lost trees on that road. Of course, new trees have been planted. They are growing very, very slowly. Another road where we lost some trees on the road where was the Nanda Theatre Road in Jayanagar. And likewise, the list goes on and on. But unfortunately, there is lack of interest, disinterest in planting trees on the road. All kinds of excuses are given that it damages the road, the species selection has to be correct, etc. All that is fine. But what we require is roadside tree plantation. Why do we require it? That is because if you have trees on the road, they result in a lower temperature. Ambient air temperature by almost 5.6 degrees centigrade, Celsius, and road surface temperature by as much as 27.5 degrees Celsius. These are not my figures. Dr. Harini Nagendra has done a fantastic study on this, and has published this. Not just this, but the SPM levels on trees covered by trees, on tree-lined trees, the SPM levels are within the prescribed limit. So this is why we require roadside trees. Other reasons why we require is, some of you will be delighted to know that the government of Karnataka has created a beautiful document called Heat Wave Action Plan. And I'm studying that right now for various reasons. But the primary reason being that Bangalore almost touched 40 degrees Celsius this year. Of course, later the situation changed and the Bangalore temperature was lower than Simla and Mussoorie for a few days. That's a different story, but the fact remains that we are affected by this temperature business. And Heat Wave Action Plan created by the government of Karnataka lays emphasis on roadside tree plantation. Same story goes about NCAP, which is the National Clean Air Program, also talks about avenue plantation. Now, the key to success of any roadside plantation is the species selection. You cannot certainly have the banyan trees on the urban roads. That goes without saying. But there are trees like the honge, for instance, pongemia. It can fit very well on the road. And some of us have initiated some action. There is a group in Indiranagar which has written to BBMP to fill up all the gaps on the 100 feet road wherever trees are gone. So that's what is going on. So this is the effort that we are making. I have another 5 minutes, Vijay. Yeah, we are okay? Yeah. We are okay? Yeah, all right. Okay. So, last 3 slides. What is the way forward? What is my expectation from citizens and from all of you sitting here? The first thing is that without citizen involvement and participation, nothing of this will work. And so, what forms will this citizen involvement take? One is vigilance. If a tree is being cut somewhere, somebody has to take a photograph. Now with our smart phones, we can take pictures very quickly. And we have to report it, to the tree officer. Now there are last mile issues there, whom to report, what is his telephone number, what is the email ID, etc. We are working on that. How do we really do something about it? And as I said, those public notices, in the last 10 days, 5 public notices have come, including one today. And please spare a few minutes as tree lovers, to browse through the tender notices and other notices page. Sometimes you will see this tree felling notice. Then there are drives of the plantation drives of various agencies, BBMP itself and other private and public agencies. Please do participate in these drives. And last but not the least in this is adoption of trees. Because if you really adopt a tree as your child and take care of it, I'm sure some of you have heard about Shalu Maradam Timmakka. She planted several hundred trees. Actually, she grew, she nurtured them as if they were her children. And so that's the way to go. There is a provision under the Tree Act for adoption of a tree. The next thing is our responsibility, enabling citizens to check illegal tree felling or filing an FIR. Currently, under the Tree Act, only the tree officer can file an FIR. The citizens are not empowered to do that. But in Pune, my tree activist friends, they have found a method. They said that we will not go under the Tree Act, but we will go under the IPC, destruction of public property anta. So that is the way to go. And that is what we are pursuing. We are studying that entire thing. And finally, what we require is a smart combo of legal remedy, media pressure, academic research, citizen action, and collaboration with the authorities. There is no way you can do without the collaboration with the authorities, because they are the ones who are acting and we have to be with them. Strengthening the forest department for the city. Now, this is something that I must share with you. It's very important for you to know. There is a forest cell in BBMP. That forest cell has vacancies. Practically half the posts are not filled. Reason? Forest department people don't want to come to BBMP on deputation. And this is something that the forest officer himself has said. Forest department is under enormous amount of pressure. You know from whom? And if somebody wants a tree to be cut, he'll go to the forest officer, he'll do everything, sam, dam, danda, bhed, and get that tree cut. So they don't want to be in this hot seat. So, from my side, whenever I have got an opportunity, once about 3-4 years ago, along with our chairman, Dr. Yellappa Reddy, we went and met the mayor. There was a lady mayor at that time. I said, please strengthen the forest department, give them bigger budget. Now, last, this again is from Nashik. If you can see this picture, there is a big tree almost in the middle of the road. And therefore what I am saying, where there is a will, there is a way. Okay? Of course, this will of the citizens is supported by the court. That's a different story. But where there is a will, if it can be done, definitely it can be done. Where it's possible and there are ways of doing it, it can be done. And last, I had started with this definitive diagram, and I go back to it. If all the citizens of Bangalore have the will, we can have a dream of restoring the 1973 image of Bangalore. As you can see, from the 2020 image, we can go back to the 1973 image. And I have full confidence in the will of Bangaloreans. I'm sure one day this dream will be fulfilled. Thank you very much.
I don't exaggerate if I say that he's approached the whole subject with a ferocity of purpose. And you've seen the results here, PILs, RTIs, and 100 other things he's been doing in the last 10 years. Now, a lot of the questions you would want to ask of him would already have been answered with this comprehensive presentation. Still in all, there'll be other questions. And what we suggest today is if you could walk up and, and that mic, ask a question, they'll be answered by Mr. Devare.
Hello, Srinivas Garudacharya, we met just recently. It's not so much a question, but a suggestion and a request. Perhaps your first and last slide, you know.
That's a very, very, I'd say, depressing or beyond depressing kind of statistics that have thrown up. Can you please share this with, I don't know where you put it, but if you can share it with others. There are schools that can be energized. There are things like the Rotary and Lions that can be, brought into the loop. It would be really, I don't think one committee or one small organization can do it. You need a lot of help. I can see that. That is one aspect, if you can share it. The other thing is, you're talking about all this white topping, and you're talking about transplanting and all that. Transplanting, you said, was about ones which are going to be killed or something like that, something to that effect. In Malleshwaram, where I come from, there is Sampige Road and Margosa Road. These are named after trees, right? None of those trees are there. Neem and Sampige are not there, okay? But it's still called those. And just today, they have done this white topping, and they found that the pipes have got affected, so they're again undoing the white topping and again redoing it. In the process of all this, the trees around, they're quite old trees, they're going to disappear. They're not dead, but the way they have done it, it's going to disappear. So you can't transplant it because it's not dying. At some point, they will be driven to death. What can be done in such cases? I don't know.
No. So your first suggestion is wonderful, and we'll definitely explore what we can do to share it in schools, colleges, or through Rotary and other. Am I audible? Yeah, through other institutions like that. As regards the damage done by white topping, in white topping, the roots will get damaged with pipes. But otherwise, what happens is when a road is done, even without concrete, even asphalting is done fully around the tree. And a few years back, actually, we had raised this issue. And not just we, but many other people had raised this issue. And the BBMP put some people on the job. At several places, space was created. Okay, and so it's a question of pursuing it, putting pressure, following up, and that's the only way to go, sir, because they recognize that there has to be space around the trees. It's understood, recognized, accepted, but there are no explicit instructions to the contractor in the document. In fact, I had asked for that document once. I didn't get it. Okay, and so I'm trying, but such provisions may not be there at all, and even if they are there, may not get enforced. So that's the sad story. But without follow-up and pursuing, I don't think there are answers to it. Okay. Have I answered your question, sir?
Hello, I'm Harish Padmanabha. It's not so much about tree planting. I look after about 12, at least a dozen trees around my house. Mahoganies, I've planted them, and then because they grow up straight, and honge and the kinds. But it's not so much that, but it's about pruning of trees, tree branches. When regular pruning doesn't happen, and when they're dangerously overhanging onto the road, on top of the cars, and people tend, instead of pruning the branches, they cut the trees themselves. You see, just day before yesterday, in front of my house, there were two, I think, 60-year-old tabubia rosias planted by my father. One quarter of the tree fell on a scooter of my assistant and it crashed. I went to the tree officer day before yesterday. And he said, fill up this, give your tax paid receipt. I said, why? why should I pay a taxpayer? I'll give you my Aadhaar card. And then there was some other gentleman, I came to know, I knew him. He said that he was running from pillar to post for 2 months to get the trees pruned. So this is one, aspect that we should look. Otherwise, the woods are lost because of the tree.
Very glamorous sounding name called tree canopy management. And that section is responsible for pruning of the branches whenever they pose any danger to life or property. Actually, there are how many? 12. I think there are 12 contractors all over the city. Their numbers can be made available, and their job explicitly is to do this. Okay, and I'm not sure how responsive they are. They were not responsive. Similarly, as far as the procedure is concerned, the procedure is clumsy, and for the clumsy procedure, the BBMP blames us, saying that, you have put a petition in the court, so we have to follow the procedure, And so we have always told them that, look, whenever there is a dangerous tree, the DCF sitting in BBMP office has the authority given to him by the court, okay, and it has to be exercised.
In other countries, forward countries, we see that regularly a team of
Yes.
contractors go with a truck with a boom,
Yes,
and then somebody underneath conducting it as though they were conducting an orchestra, and they chop. All that is done, but regularly. But many trees are dangerously, the branches are overhanging, and something has to be done. Otherwise, the trees will go.
Okay. Just another thing I want to say here is that some years ago, we came to know that there is something called a tree ambulance service in Madras, or Chennai rather. And my dream, or rather, my desire and intention is to initiate something like a tree ambulance service in Bangalore. Because personally, I keep getting calls, And, whenever there is a tree posing danger or it being cut or it is deceased, So that's one service which is very badly needed here. Okay.
At the same time, the BESCOM contractors,
Yes.
Just happily come and slash all the branches without, giving any respect to the tree, the shape of the tree, what it should be in the arboriculture methods. Nothing. They just chop it off and go. How can they do it and not allow a citizen to be proactive, like you said?
Sir, I have a long-standing battle with BESCOM running for the last 10 years. And at one time, I received a letter from the managing director of BESCOM saying that I have issued instructions to everybody, the engineers, etc. When an engineer came to my house, we took a round of the inner ring road between Domlur and Koramangala, and I showed him what is to be done. Okay, but when that engineer is transferred, there is no process of handing over that responsibility. That is one. And number two, one response that I got from BESCOM was also interesting. They said, we don't require any permission under some act that they showed. For that, the long-term solution is underground wire electricity cables. That project is underway right now. And whenever it happens, I think it will provide us some relief from BESCOM.
True, but BESCOM themselves don't do it. They give it to subcontractors.
Contractors.
And they are not clueless. They are clueless.
No.
They're not.
Underground thing.
Yes.
It's already done during COVID. They've done that.
Yeah.
But when it will actually be activated, when they'll run the wires, that nobody will want to engineers and all that.
Yeah.
They say, sir, this is basically
another
activity, project activity.
Yeah. It's happening in phases, what I understand. Yeah.
Hello, good evening. I'm Arun. I have a suggestion, and I wanted your feedback of the entire presentation you made. The first slide is what hits people, and there may be 150 people here. But I know about 10,000 people who have forwarded that slide on WhatsApp.
Yes,
So the power of a visual is very strong.
yes, yes.
Okay, and it mainstreams the public
Yeah.
from the people who are preaching to the
Yeah, yeah.
converted at one level is not useful.
Absolutely, yeah.
So my question is,
Yeah.
does such a visual exist for which is the best city in India over the last 5 years, which has reversed the trend? Or, I mean, do we have a role model or is it just a hopeless cause? One, that is my first question. That supposing we created 10 cities, 10 years, which city is doing it right? And I'm drawing from the Swachh Bharat program, where a hopeless cause, by instilling pride in state leadership, that it's a good thing to do when the instructions come from the top. Then, so I'm just wondering if there is a role for very smart data presentation to create a sense of comparison and instill pride so that it goes beyond the problems that you.
Yeah, according to the research that I have done, one of the best cities today is Gandhinagar. Yeah, that's definitely has the highest green cover. And the other, of course, is Chandigarh. You know, these two cities. Chandigarh is a role model in another respect because Chandigarh has actually recognized something like 20 trees as heritage trees, and they cannot be touched. Okay, so that's about all. But if you ask me about reversal and so on, I don't have information. But certainly, there is a lot to learn from these two cities, and therefore, in an appropriate manner, I will explore how something can be shared. It's a wonderful suggestion, and in fact, I keep looking at these model cities. More work needs to happen on that, which I promise to undertake.
Thank you, Mr. Devare, for a very comprehensive presentation. However, I found that you have not mentioned about real estate development and the number of trees that are affected by the expanding houses and apartment blocks and all that. The Tree Act, if I remember, applies even for the trees in private property. What measures are being taken by the BBMP in terms of when giving permission for a office block or a apartment block, protecting the trees in that property, or as you said, transplantation or compensatory plantation? Is it being vigorously enforced? That is first question. Second question is, whenever we have heavy rains, we have trees on the roadside, some of the trees on the roadside falling down, damaging cars, blocking roads and all that, which is entirely due to imbalanced root structure because of the asphalting or concreting or whatever you call it. Is BBMP making a survey of all such trees and pruning them in a manner in which that imbalance is rectified so that the accidental felling of trees due to heavy rain can be reduced?
Yeah.
These are the two questions.
Yes, Captain. I'll answer the second question first because I mentioned about this group called the Tree Canopy Management. The tree canopy, one of the responsibilities of this tree canopy management is that I have the document which spells out what they are supposed to do. And they are supposed to take care of it. They have all the equipment, etc. And so they are expected to prune the branches as scientifically as possible. That's their responsibility. So there is something in place, some mechanism in place. As far as the trees affected by real estate projects, the same rules apply. However, the rate of compensatory plantation is not 1:10, but it is typically 1:3. Okay, and once again, as I mentioned, transplantation has become obligatory for the bigger projects like metro, etc., under our PIL. But there, with regard to real estate or individuals cutting trees inside their premises, that kind of mandatory transplantation or compensatory plantation is not getting enforced. That's the problem, because 2, 3 of my RTI applications are pending with BBMP for about 2 years, one with the Information Commission for about a year, and specifically asked, what is the compensatory plantation done in place of trees felled in private properties? Response is very low. In fact, I might be going there. So it's not a problem of the rule not being there, but it's a problem of enforcement. And enforcement needs to be tightened through pressure, through follow-up, and so on. So that's something that we'll be attempting. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Sanjay Ketkar. Thank you, Mr. Devare, for a very impressive presentation, and really impressed by the passion you have for saving the trees. My question is little, on the context of little bigger picture than just Bangalore. On one side, we are seeing Bangalore's, trees are getting cut and the green cover is getting lost. But on the other side, we hear the news articles that overall forest cover area within India has increased. Is it really true, or they are just giving a consoling factor to us, saying that don't worry guys, we are killing the earth, but we are taking care of the Mars? Is that something like that they are doing?
I will respond, Mr. Ketkar, but please take my answer with a slight pinch of salt for the obvious reason that, yes, indeed, the figures show that the tree cover has gone up. But it's a magic of redefinition, because plantations, of maybe palm or other kinds of plantations have been now classified as forest, and plantations have grown, and so you see overall picture growing. Okay, what we require is biodiversity, okay, and the natural forests either getting rejuvenated or revived. That has not happened, and so to that extent, the data is I would say partly misleading, and so that's my response to your question. Yeah.
First off, admirable the kind of work you've already rendered. Advocacy, both literally and figuratively. It's amazing. And also the audience that's here today in support of you. So it's phenomenal, the work that is already underway. And I'm sure you're not going to be giving up anytime soon. Thanks to you, the trees breathe well. And because we have such a complementary relationship with trees, we breathe well as well. My question to you is it theoretically possible that given the green cover is completely gone now, from all green, it has become almost all red? Forget about another model city, like somebody was pointing out to other 10 cities, maybe we can just try to model after. Is it theoretically possible to go back to that place where we started in 1973? Or is this like we can only restore 50% of it? The reason I ask is climate change is actually no longer something that you read in the papers. You experience it every single year now. Unusually cold summers, warm winters, rains at the wrong time. It's starting to scare people now. Something better be done very soon. So can we go back? Is this irreversible, first off?
Well, actually, going back to the 73 figure is indeed a dream. I mean, let's be very practical and realistic about it. But at the same time, definitely there is a scope for us to actually expand considerably. Because, as I was telling you, the way to go uh, is to utilize every available patch of land in the city for plantation, okay, and avenue plantation. And so to that extent, if you, therefore, the methods they talked about, Miyawaki, for instance, it can do wonders. I have seen one of the Miyawaki pine plantation. It's amazing. Roadside plantation can again bring back a lot of glory. And so it's not impossible. At the same time, it's a very, very Herculean task. And unless lots of heads actually, all of us put our heads, heart and soul into it, and not just heart and soul, but our legs into it, legs and hands into it, it's not going to happen. So yeah.
Is vertical farming
Yeah.
a solution to this?
Well, as I said, these vertical gardens, have their own utility. The way I look at the scenario right now is that everything possible must be done. Okay, and so if it's Miyawaki, we must attempt where it's possible. Where it is vertical gardens, we should explore, and of course, roadside transplantation. And these are the common methods that we must explore. Well, as far as the land use pattern of Bangalore is concerned, I don't think we can really reverse it, because very little green belt has remained intact. Wherever it was there, it is becoming that green is slowly turning to brown and red and all that, and so the whole thing is not reversible, certainly not. But there is scope to do a lot, and if we really do it in earnest, I believe a lot can be done. Yeah. That's my feeling.
Thank you very much, sir. A lot has been said about your talk. I just want one crazy idea to just tell you. Now, to even put samplings in front of the house or road anywhere, people have to find out, go in search of which specific sapling we have to put all that. Is it possible to think of an idea where now you have hop farms everywhere? Is it possible to make available the tree seed, whichever is possible to plant in front of your house, either freely available or with a minimal cost, and encourage citizens to do that? Now that each house takes up a seed from the hop palms or like that and plants, I think that there's a possibility of making it green or in front of the house on the road where they stay. Is it a viable idea to do that? That's one question. And second thing is, during this environmental day, we see about the news or media, people just for the sake of publicity, sapling do that and get it publicized. But in schools is the where you can change the thinking of the student. That is where you have to bring in this awareness of this environment. So can any program be thought of during Environmental Day in a major way to make all the students, the young minds, were aware of this problem and try to change the world? That's what two things I want.
Yeah, so the answer to your first question is that actually BBMP makes available saplings without charging anything. So they are distributing. This year their target is 1 lakh plantation. And in their nurseries, as far as I know, they have grown. They have plants available, and even tall plants are available. So they would have taken care of choosing the right species. So they would be available. What is missing, is this last mile or the outreach on their part, So they actually, trying something, I am in touch with those people. They are doing something. Anytime you ask them, "Sir, staff illa, budget illa," so these are the things that you hear. So, I mean, then what do you say? I mean, if you say this, there are a number of voluntary organizations, okay, who are doing phenomenal work. okay? And, I have access to some of them. I have information about them. They are definitely doing something. And, they do encourage, citizens to plant trees in front of their houses. So that definitely is possible. It can certainly be done.
I'm Savita. Thank you so much for your presentation and your contributions. I have two things to ask. One is, if a tree has to be made a heritage tree, what are the criteria that is required? Let's say, as a citizen myself, I want to apply for a tree which is significant to become a heritage tree. So then what is the procedure? And also, let's say in urban spaces, we have certain trees which have become extremely meaningful to the community in urban spaces on roadside trees that have become extremely meaningful because of the way the community utilizes it and is generally in, like, what do I say, interacts with it. Now, can those trees also come under those heritage, or does it become also something like adopting? How that does work? That is one question, because I want to understand how we can protect even significant trees in and around us which have like a greater emotional attachment to the community and to the people there. The other one is more of like a personal, how do I say, curiosity, because obviously I had a lot of affection. I have a lot of affection for Nanda Road, that tree, Nanda Theatre Road. I just want to know how the whole procedure went about. Was there any, what do I say, consultation that the government did before they did what they did, or was there replantation? Just to understand it, because it's my curiosity. I was very young when that happened, and I was kind of very unhappy that whatever was done. So I just want to know more information if you have it. Thanks.
Yeah. So your first question, heritage trees. There is no such thing as heritage trees recognized under any act. We have a biodiversity act actually, and under that act, a heritage site is recognized. So one of the heritage sites concerning trees is the Nallur Tamarind Grove, somewhere close to the Devanhalli airport. Now that has 400-year-old tamarind trees, okay? But that particular site is recognized, not the trees, unfortunately. So exactly 1.5 years back, BET made a representation to the Biodiversity Board, and we supplied them a lot of information. As far as the criteria are concerned, age is the criteria, the species is the criteria, the religious, social attachment of people or significance, that is another criteria. So there are multiple criteria, and our proposal went up to a point, actually. There was a gentleman there who was very keen. Unfortunately, his term got over. We were pursuing it for some time. The other attempt that we made actually for recognition of heritage trees was based on a Supreme Court observation. And on those KRDCL roads that I mentioned, there were 100 heritage trees. So, and they themselves gave us a list. And we went even up to the Supreme Court, saying that under your own guidelines, please issue a direction for recognizing these as the heritage trees. I'm sorry, but we were not successful. So there is nothing that you can do to get a tree recognized as a heritage tree. As regards Nanda Road is concerned, Nanda Road saw a lot of protest actually at that time. I was there. That was long back. And as a result of the protest, definitely, and a lot of pressure put on the groups that were working, Hasiru, Siru and others, a lot of trees got saved, because now the trees that have been cut there are the ones around the stations, okay? But then subsequently another new line started there and they knocked down a lot of trees. That also I have seen. So there was public consultations to some extent. There were protests, and so I would say it can be termed as a success story because definitely a few trees or a good number of trees got saved as a result of all this activism. That's the background about
How many trees
Nanda.
got cut, if you do know?
I don't readily remember the number, but saving was also significant.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
Right. Okay.
Seems like there's one more question.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Kirtana. Thank you for the presentation. It was extremely interesting. I was just wondering, you were talking about trees that are like, there was a question earlier about how the total green cover has gone up, but in terms of what's actually happened, it's not. It's come down because a lot of those are palm and the like. So, is there any provision in place that ensures that when you've got new trees being planted, those are actually, helping biodiversity, improving biodiversity? And is there any provision in place for that? Or is it just, to an extent, just what's there, what's local, all of that?
Now, are you talking about in the urban areas or you're talking about
In Bangalore, because of course there would be, you have biodiversity even in Bangalore. So what would be species that would help promote biodiversity in
Yeah.
Bangalore and the like?
I won't readily be able to tell you the list, but under our PIL, compensatory plantation actually has to happen of certain species. Those species have been specified. And I can offline provide you that list. But the Chief Justice or the bench was very particular about it at that time, saying that you can't just plant anything, And so that has definitely happened. As regards the awareness of planting native species, that awareness is certainly growing. You will now find, very rarely trees such as gulmohar being planted. They are really talking about, native species. That is definitely happening. I would say guidelines do exist. Okay. They are being followed to a great extent within the limitations of everybody concerned. So the picture is encouraging, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll only end by saying, happy saving and happy planting.